Hi, my name is Evan Kazlaz. I'm 17 years old. I live in Memphis, Tennessee. A piece of advice I would give someone who is trying to get involved in activism is to look at the communities around you. I have a place called The Haven and out Memphis, and there are a lot of activists in my cities. Get involved with them. Meet with them, talk with them, and they will get you connections because that is part of their job. A lot of those community centers do help you with that. And so just going there and looking at those communities, and they will help you get involved.
I'm feeling queer today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zorian Edwards. I use he, they pronouns, and I'm 18 years old, and I'm from Sagertown, PA.
And I'm Trudy Poux. I use they, them pronouns. I'm 19 years old, and I am in upstate New York.
And we want to welcome you to the I'm Feeling Queer Today podcast that amplifies the voices of queer youth.
Throughout Season 1 and Season 2, we have shared the perspectives of young queer folks from all over North America and the similar ways we move through the world and the commonalities we have no matter where we were raised.
Today, we are going to take a deeper dive into the lives of queer youth and how their circumstances vary from state to state, leading them in different directions on how they express themselves, find community, and engage in activism.
At the top of the episode, we heard from Evan Kazlaz from Memphis, Tennessee, with his advice for young people interested in pursuing activism within the LGBTQ+ community.
On that note, we are going to hear from Fiona, who made it her mission to see that her small Catholic school in New England added LGBTQ+ history into their curriculum. Fiona sat down with Lily to share her story.
Hi, I'm Lily, and today I have the absolute privilege of sharing some of a friend's story with you. I went to high school with Fiona, and she was always so kind and so welcoming and just uproariously funny. Her senior year, Fiona took on a project that changed the entire school's curriculum, paving the path for a legacy she wouldn't even be at the school to see. Without further ado, Fiona.
I had, I would say, positive exposure to LGBTQ+ people growing up. I didn't really know exactly what it was, and I can't remember when I really discovered that it was a thing. If I had to guess, I would say 4th or 5th grade. I didn't directly know of any LGBTQ+ people. It wasn't something that my parents shielded us away from. It just wasn't around me. The only queer people I can remember knowing was my uncle worked on Broadway, and 2 of his best friends were 2 gay men that were married. They would be around family cookouts and stuff. It was just never like, oh, they're gay. It was just kind of like, oh, like this is so-and-so, like they're married. When you're a little kid, you don't think about stuff like that. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, super cool, like bye. I probably still thought marriage was like when 2 people are really, really best friends. I have grown up surfing, and surfing's a huge part of my identity. And I really looked up to a surfer. Her name's Tyler Wright. She's an out and proud gay woman. Her and her wife are absolutely adorable. I follow them both on Instagram. She's someone I've looked up to as a surfer since I was younger because she uses her platform as a professional surfer to show openness within the surfing community, and it's really special to watch. My coach, she was out, and I just remember feeling very, very connected to her. I had no idea who I was, and I was completely lost, and she was the only lesbian woman that I knew. Having her help me through that 8th grade through 10th grade time frame was a lifesaver for me. When I came out, I felt very safe confiding in her, and she helped me come out to my parents and friends as well. God forbid anything went wrong. My parents were pretty accepting, although it did take them some time to come around to the idea. Especially my mom were struggling with it because your parents, you do have to kind of give them room to not grieve, but understand they had this perfect picture of me getting married, walking down the aisle with a man, because that's how their generation was raised. And when I came out, that idea died. Although I'm still going to get married, hopefully. It's just going to look a little differently. Now, it's very open conversations about my sexuality between my parents and myself. We're very open about it. My dad and I will hit on girls when we're watching TV together versus before it was more like my mom would be like, oh, do you think he's cute? I came out at the end of my sophomore year of high school, but wasn't ever like fully out. Majority of staff members didn't know. Majority of the students did, and my friends knew, and I was very open about that, but it wasn't something that I would parade around necessarily. Growing up in rural Connecticut, there was zero LGBTQ plus representation, basically. But I went to P-Town, Provincetown, Massachusetts. Very, very gay place. It was super, super fun. I felt like there was a huge community the whole entire day that we were there. P-Town is really big into drag shows. As always, just so much fun. I felt like I was just with my people, and that was hard coming from a small town. I never really had that growing up. I actually did a giant capstone project that I shared with administration about LGBTQ plus representation at my school, which was a very small Catholic private high school. There was no LGBTQ plus representation. The whole point of my project was to get LGBTQ plus history intertwined into history class in general because it was not being taught. We never heard of LGBTQ plus history in standard high school history class. And it is a part of U.S. history. Stonewall was not taught. It is something that occurred right at the end of the civil rights movement. I say that in quotes because the civil rights movement is an ongoing fight for marginalized groups across the country. Stonewall occurring in 1969, right after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. You're talking about two marginalized groups in America having a major catalyst in their civil rights movements. I remember reading about LGBTQ plus historical figures. Marsha P. Johnson is probably the most publicized, quoted as being one of the initiators of the Stonewall riots, which exploded the LGBTQ plus rights movement. One person I learned a lot about in high school was Alan Turing. He was a British citizen that worked for British intelligence. He was able to code a machine to crack the German ciphers that ended up saving just millions of lives during World War II. The minute that they discovered that he was a gay man, he was stripped of all his access and notability in his field of work, which is absolutely heartbreaking. Think of how many more lives he could have saved with his brain. They took that away from him just because of who he was. Doing this capstone project was my way of hopefully leaving the school better than I left it.
Thanks to Fiona, a little private Catholic high school in rural America now incorporates queer voices in history into their history, science, and literature courses and is home to a comprehensive gender studies course. I am so grateful to Fiona for her bravery, her persistence, her kindness, and the changes she made for me and kids for years to come. It was an honor to hear some of her story.
I was also highly involved in trying to change homophobic policies and practices within my school system in PA. In high school, I was the president of my Pride Alliance and consistently spoke up at school board meetings against policies that would negatively impact LGBTQIA+ students. I was also the editor-in-chief of our high school newspaper and wrote articles protesting these policies. Next, we will hear a conversation between myself and my friend Neo about finding supportive LGBTQ+ resources not only in school, but also within our local community.
Hi, I'm Neo. My pronouns are they, them, but I'm okay with any kind of Neo pronouns.
So, we're gonna start off talking about coming out, self-discovery, that kind of stuff. First off, how do you identify, and how did you figure out you identified that way?
So I identify as biromantic, asexual, and then I also identify as agender. The way I figured that out was a lot of listening to other people's experiences and figuring it out through talking to people. That's the best way, honestly. And I met other people with that gender identity and that sexuality. I was like, that makes a lot of sense to me. Coming to the school not even 2.5 months ago, there was quite a lot of hate I got, and I still do, surrounding my identity and who I am. I actually have done multiple speeches in my government class, giving them statistics and telling them to stop doing that, because it's not even just a funny joke, it's pretty serious.
How would you say that you celebrate your gender identity?
I like to look masculine and feminine at the same time. That's gender affirming for me. I'll do this extravagant makeup with eyeliner, colorful eyeshadow, and then I will have a binder and a baggy hoodie on.
And I can attest your style is amazing.
Thank you.
Alright, so are there any other ways that you celebrate yourself?
Something I like to do is my TikTok. I express myself way more openly on there than I do normally. With all the anti-trans legislation, I find it pretty cool that we're all still going to celebrate who we are. And it's pretty cool because I meet a lot of other like-minded people that like my opinions of what I say.
Did you know that every year there is a National Day of Silence for LGBTQIA plus youth?
I would really enjoy doing that because there is a lot going on in the world, so it's good to have a day to respect those who didn't have accepting families and it didn't end well.
During October, that is LGBTQIA plus History Month, so we talk a lot about Stonewall and how the movement started. Is there anything you do for that?
I see a lot of it on social media, and I try to share the posts and get it out there to people.
There's actually a really good LGBT population up in Erie, and they do a bunch of stuff, like drag bingo is a thing every month.
Yeah, I've seen some subtle ways people celebrate. Like certain businesses will have a pride flag or something, and then you see it and you're like, wow, I actually feel kind of cared about within the community, and it's good to know that there are businesses that support us.
Yeah, we actually have a relatively supportive group in our area, and that's awesome. There's also this organization up in Erie as well that Eli Skelton, who is a trans man in our area, he runs this. It's called P.S. The Trans Family Loves You. I haven't been able to go, but I have this sticker on my laptop and it reminded me of that. So that's another way that queer celebration is in our area. Downtown Meadville is a huge supportive area. The marketplace has a gay flag, a trans flag, and they did have a progress flag up at one point. It was really sweet. And then all the little shops down there, like the French Creek Cafe is really supportive and have openly stated that in the Meadville Tribune, which is a local newspaper. They have pride flags up and they sell copies of the Erie Gay News. So when you go in, you can grab a copy.
That's pretty cool.
Now that I'm sitting down and thinking about like all the little subtle things people do in the area that are supportive, I feel like really loved.
The one thing I noticed is even in like a small town like where I live, it's pretty brave to fly a pride flag, which I think is a pretty big celebration of who we are. It's good that people still have the bravery to do that, even when there are lots of people who would do anything to have us not around.
Recently, I met some people from Women's Services at a school board meeting, and they are hugely supportive of us. They came up and gave me a mom hug.
Aw, that's so sweet.
It was.
On the news I saw, this parent realized there are so many LGBT kids and adults that when they get married, they don't have their parents there. So he started a whole thing where you literally can have someone be your parent and help you get ready and do all the fun things that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And I always thought that was a really good way to celebrate.
That is so sweet.
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, wow. And they actually have over 100,000 members working there now.
Is there anything you want to add on the topic of queer celebration?
I just want to say your Town Pride Alliance was cool, and I really enjoyed it, and I felt like really cared about in that atmosphere, and I didn't feel alone. And I actually, because we played that trivia game, I ended up getting a pride flag, and I still have it in my room. So.
Last year, I bought 7 of them for my friends, and they all really enjoyed it because a lot of them, like a lot of people in this area, don't have supportive family or parents. When someone hands you a pride flag and is like, hey, you exist, and that's amazing.
I had an art teacher that knew I was part of the community and that I wasn't really being supported at the time and got me a little pride flag. That was really a wonderful moment for me because she was so supportive. She even asked us all what our pronouns were and included they, them as an option. A wonderful teacher.
Awesome. Do you have your driver's permit?
Not yet.
Alright, so when you get your driver's permit, you get a form to fill it out. There is an X option, so no gender. That's an option on your driver's permit. Mine says female.
Mine's gonna end up saying that too, sadly.
Yeah.
The F is not for female. The F is for fantastic. Think of it that way.
Since that interview, the Centertown Pride Alliance has disbanded, and the high school no longer has any kind of LGBTQ plus club. This is actually very sad for me. The Centertown Pride Alliance has existed for quite a while, even though it wasn't as loud and proud as it was when it ended. An art teacher at Centertown actually started it when I was in 8th grade. She created it because she felt that we needed it. And then she left the school district the following year of starting this club. And the journalism teacher, Mrs. Stacy, and her husband, who was also an English teacher at Centertown, took it over at that point, took this club and made it what it was. They were both advocates for the LGBT community. They made sure that people knew about it. They got dedicated students that were like, yeah, this is important, who would make flyers, host meetings. And Mrs. Stacy specifically would come to board meetings with me. She helped support me. She got me involved. Like, she taught me how to sign up for the meetings, make sure I can speak and stuff like that. She was always fighting for the First Amendment and LGBT rights. But a lot of that came with a price. A lot of people in the community knew her by name, sent her death threats, threatened her children, threatened her students, and has since been bullied out of the school district and no longer teaches.
That's just awful. And I think the worst part of that story is that it's so common nowadays, especially in areas where people don't know any queer or trans people. It's so much more common, I think, for people to make assumptions about the community because they have little information. And then, that kind of creates an unwillingness to learn, even when they are faced with those opportunities. And I think the other piece that's important is that resources really vary depending on where you're located. I've been lucky enough to have a lot of resources growing up. In high school, I had a gender sexuality alliance that I was a part of. And now I'm at a school where the majority of students identify on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And it feels very safe and affirming to be in an environment where I'm never the only person who uses they, them pronouns in a room, because I didn't really think that was possible. But now I feel so normal in that environment in a really great way.
So let's take a bit of a turn and move south, where some states have been pursuing harsh restrictions on queer and most specifically trans young people.
At the end of May 2024, Tennessee's governor approved legislation designed to block adults from helping minors receive gender-affirming care without parental consent. As of this recording, in July 2024, the trans legislation tracker is following 33 anti-trans bills in the state. While news like this might make a young person feel fearful and helpless, there are ways that LGBTQ plus organizations in the area have helped young queer folks to become an integral part of the conversation about the injustices of these policies and practices.
Next, we will hear from Evan, who we introduced to you at the top of the episode. Evan shares how he became a powerful voice fighting for the rights of trans youth and their mission to educate Tennessee lawmakers.
I came out at 11 as a lesbian, and then kind of just left it alone. I was just like, it was whatever. And then at 13, I learned the word non-binary, and I knew I immediately fit with it. And finally, when I was almost 14, I came out to my parents. But then I freaked out because for me, coming out to my parents meant coming out to the world, because I'm sorry, but my parents are old, and once they switch pronouns, that is it. They were not going back with any of their friends. And so it took me a few months to be like, okay, let's start using they, them pronouns. And then I also discovered I was asexual. Took forever to figure that out. And then I eventually changed my name to L. I didn't want it to permanently be L, but I did not like my dead name, So that was kind of a placeholder. And then I eventually came up with Evan. I started using he, they pronouns. The middle name I chose for myself does have significance. My dad has this weird thing in his family where every firstborn son has to be named after my great-grandmother's maiden name. So Alan is my middle name now. And yeah, that's kind of been my coming out story. Memphis is weird because we are a Democratic city, but we're in a red state. December, when the original trans bill hearings were happening, out Memphis was like, we need someone to come and testify. We know it's really last minute. And so I drove up to Nashville with my family, and I was supposed to testify, but due to several scheduling issues, I ended up not. But I did sit through and I listened to those court hearings and a lot of the things they were saying. And then I really did want to speak, and I got to talking with the people at Out Memphis, and I was invited to speak at a rally. I was super nervous. That was really scary. And it was really hard for the first few times that I spoke because I didn't think what I was doing was good, but obviously everyone else did since I kept getting invited back. But I think I had this mindset that I was supposed to fix all of this, and there was no way that I could. And I was really, really nervous because I was like, this isn't enough. I'm not doing enough. Or no one who needs to hear me is going to hear me. And I finally got to the point where I let go of that. I'm speaking more for myself, but also the people around me. And I'm speaking to educate and also to just let people hear what is actually going on with the world. Now, I'm not really nervous to speak. I just went and talked to people from the United States Health Department, and I wasn't nervous to speak because I wasn't asking them all to fix this, but I was making them aware of it.
I think what really resonated with me about this piece is feeling like if you're doing any sort of activism or striving for change, it's like it feels very perfection, not progress, when really, in my opinion, there should be room for growth and improvement along your journey.
When they were talking about how they feel compelled to always speak up, really resonated with me. I am a writer. I've written a lot of articles dealing with trans issues, LGBT issues. It's a very powerful thing, and it gives me hope to know that others do that as well.
So what is life like for a queer young person who does not have any real home base and whose geographic location has changed from year to year? Such is the reality for Jaye, a young person who we met at the tail end of their year-long stay in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Thanks to her grandmother, Jaye was able to find temporary respite in a church basement at Spartanburg's Uplift Outreach Center. Take a listen.
My name is Jaye, Jaye with an E. I use she, her pronouns primarily, but I'm non-binary. I use anything. So they, them, he, him, I don't care. I am 16 years old as of March. I am resided in the Cunningham RV Park. I have been homeschooled since my travels, since I was 3. And at one point in life, I lived in an apartment, but otherwise it's just been the RV. My dad works. He's a building superintendent, so the moves are forced. I've never had a set home place, which has kind of messed me up a little bit, but otherwise, I think I'm doing pretty well. I've been to Texas, Oklahoma, Florida. I was born in Michigan. I was in New York for a short amount of time. I've been to Alabama. I've been to Atlanta. We mainly moved from like Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Alabama. I get most of what I need to know just kind of online, which is my preferred way of doing it. I just figure it out, or I ask people. I'll be like, how do you do this? And I'll be told. So I kind of go from just outside resources anyhow. Today I am at Uplift Outreach Center, We're making centerpieces out of shoes that are going to be auctioned off at the Rainbow Ball to help support Uplift. It's like a prom thing, but for the LGBTQ folk around here, which I think is very good considering that a lot of people, they're not supportive. In really any area. You'll find some places that are, but really the Rainbow Ball is like perfect for us LGBTQ folk, and I'm very thankful for it. I found out about Uplift because my grandma, she saw a Facebook page and she saw like everything about it and just thought that it was lovely and my kind of place. And I'm really grateful that she like let me start coming here because normally I'm just at home kind of doing my own thing. You know, one thing that I love about specifically this community is they don't really care what you are. They don't care if you don't even know what you are. They don't care if you're an ally. As long as you are somewhere in the little umbrella, then you're allowed here. And I like that because most places that I've kind of known about have been extremely exclusive. They've been like, we want only this and this, which I don't think should really be a thing. Having a place, just a community that I can go to every week, to me, I find it to be a really good thing, especially for other kids who don't really have the best time at home. I find it to be extremely hard to be around churches and Christians. My whole family was like that, and I think that's why I was so confused about my identity. I've always been leaning on the term lesbian, but because of like the South and stuff and being like, no darn queers, all the people that I've known have been around me like that my entire life. And it kind of pushed away what I truly wanted to feel. And I noticed the South does, unfortunately, have that tendency. It's not a stereotype, it's just true. And I wish people understood that a bit more. Now that I'm here at Uplift, I realize that I can give anything a chance, and hey, if it don't work out, it's not for me. And I think that that goes for any kid, any adult, or just young child that's like me, going through a similar story. Since I've come to Uplift, I've been getting out more. And that sounds like a little thing, but I got diagnosed with lupus at the age of 11, and so I've had a very complicated relationship with going outside, which has also kind of affected my identity. That's kind of why I stayed inside for so long, figuring out who I was. And, you know, going to Uplift made me realize there are people who are like me. There are people who are awesome and like are actually accepting. They don't care what you are. They're not extremely biased against their own community, which some places for me have been. But now that I know that there's a place like Uplift, I'm so happy and I love it here. My mom is considering maybe letting us stay with a friend that we have here so that I can go to the Rainbow Ball, because since I've been homeschooled, I don't have anything like that, but I would love to do that here.
I really liked hearing about Jaye's story and finding the Uplift Outreach Center. I find also just being non-binary and also coming out at an early age, I felt the community leaning towards very conventional ideas of who can be in it and how you have to look if you are non-binary. Sometimes it would be like, yeah, come hang out with us, but you don't look like this, or you should look like this. I really appreciated her insight. Thanks for sharing your story, Jaye. In Season 3, you'll hear more stories from Spartanburg, as well as several other location-specific episodes from queer youth and their experience navigating the places that they currently call home.
We want to leave you with a poem from Evan that acts as a reminder that there are gifts to be found along whatever road you are traveling. It's called From Here to Now.
(1,497 miles I have traveled. Nashville has become familiar to me. I'm starting to recognize the officers at the state capitol. The capitol is where I go to battle. There is never a moment of rest. On floor 5, 1, 4, and back down to 1. Bills after bills pass, veto pass. Sessions beginning, sessions ending. It doesn't matter to them who speaks against them. Their minds are made. Senators and representatives turn their ears off, going to a place where they are powerful. Science and parents can be overthrown. They protest their faith in a faithless system. I am still there. In this building with so many doors, I hold my sign high in silence. No words are allowed in the senator's house, but I make my words heard here. I walk up and down the halls and I listen, but most importantly, I speak. Words of truth that many don't want to hear. Home is a familiar place. People listen and people hear. Words of encouragement whisper when I lose my voice. They listen. The sad look on adults' faces always stay. The children are there and the people I am here for. Their fear is the same as mine. So I stand on a stage and I make my pain seen. My voice is there in Memphis and my voice is there in Congress, especially for those who don't want to listen. 1,497 miles I've traveled for myself, my trans siblings, and the trans youth in this place of Tennessee.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm Zorian.
And I'm Trudy.
And you've been listening to
I'm Feeling Queer Today. If you like what you hear, please rate us and share the show with your friends or family, or both. And don't forget to ask yourself, how am I feeling queer today?
For more information and resources about this episode, check out the show notes or visit the episode page at thefutureperfectproject.org/podcast. And if this is your first time joining us, make sure you go back and take a listen to Season 1.
We want to hear from you. That's why we set up our very own online voicemail box for you, our listeners, to leave us recorded messages. Let us know what you think of the latest episode or share topics that you'd like us to cover in the pod. All you have to do is go to speakpipe.com/IFQT.
If you or a young person you know between the ages of 13 to 24 is currently in crisis, check out thetrevorproject.org for LGBTQIA+ specific support through text and chat, or call 1-866-488-7386. We'll also include this information in the show notes as resources.
To learn more about the Future Perfect Project and all of our free arts programming for LGBTQIA+ youth, visit thefutureperfectproject.org or find us on social media at The Future Perfect Project.
I'm Feeling Queer Today is produced by the Future Perfect Project with support from Radio Kingston, WKNY, Kingston, New York. This episode was produced by me, Trudy Poux.
And me, Zorian Edwards.
Thank you to our guests this episode, Evan, Fiona, Neo, and Jaye. And additional thanks to the rest of the IFQT production team. Lily Muller, Alex Massey, Eric Eubank, Wallace, Frankie Gunn, Claire Florence, Sam Smalls, Sonia Mia Blanco, and Ari.
Our theme song was composed and performed by Alex Massey and produced by Emma Jane Seslowski.
Additional music composed by Alex Massey, Emma Jane Seslowski, and Epidemic Sound. Episode mixing and mastering by Julie Novak with assistance from Emma Jane Seslowski. Special thanks to executive producers and mentors Julie Novak and Celeste Lassine, as well as Future Perfect Project team members Ryan Amador, Kiko Wan, and Aaliyah Jamil.